Hey, it's Andy Logan, creator of The Shivers. Just wanted to chat with you today about the use of AI in the creative industry and how it's used and why I think it's corrosive to the creative process and why I'll never use it. First off, just a little explainer about what I mean by AI, what it does, and some backstory. I'm talking about programs like ChatGPT for text-based outputs or Midjourney or DALL-E for image-based outputs. These are called generative AIs. They are programs that have been trained by scouring decades or centuries of human creative works that are now found online. And they look at that data set and they find patterns, and then they generate an output that replicates the patterns in that data set. Essentially, they're creating, inspired copies of pre-existing and often copyrighted work. This is all very new. In just the past few years, previously AI researchers spent decades trying to make computers replicate the human mind. We're talking mimicking the processes of logic, decision-making, values, memory, learned behavior that humans use every day. This is the kind of AI we're most familiar with from what we see and have come to fear in sci-fi futuristic movies of computers taking over, computers that can outthink humans. That's kind of like our classic expectation of AI. But recently, that's changed. The AI researchers discovered that that's actually an impossible task. Human consciousness isn't, based on ones and zeros that computers are. It's based on chemical reactions, maybe even quantum reactions. Really tough for computers to achieve, which is why they spent decades really going nowhere. So after all that time of kind of fruitless effort, the AI community said, why are we banging our heads against the wall trying to replicate the human mind when we can just replicate the human mind's output and kind of fake it? So they turned to what computers do best, which is ripping through large data sets and trying to look for patterns, and then they turned that power loose on kind of the collective human works of humanity, all conveniently now available online. And these tools work in a couple of ways. They steal from a lot of different works. I'm sorry, they steal a little from a lot of different works, or they steal a lot from a small amount of works. And of course, without tracing any credit back or permissions from the original source material. So now, fast forward in the last few years, and these tools have actively now being used in my disciplines of product design and game design. And people calling themselves, AI artists or AI designers, just like an oxymoron, now can go on social media sharing their shiny new illustrations or stories or music that they've created with these generative AIs and saying, look what I created with just a few keystrokes. And it kind of, its first glance looks nice and clean and glossy. But they never show the source material that the AI stole from originally. They never asked permission to use that material against the copyright holder's permission. They never credit the original creators, and certainly they never shared any revenue with them that came from those creations. And so the creative industry is pushing back, as you'd expect. Artists and illustrators are fighting back. Hollywood writers are striking over this. Week, the major authors lawsuit was brought against the makers of ChatGPT. So all fronts in the creative industry are really marshaling their efforts. But these AI companies are using what's known in the tech world as the move fast and break things approach, which is trying to get into the market and skirt under laws and people's livelihoods in the way Airbnb and Uber did before cities can get laws in place to counter them. And some publishers or studios use these new AI tools and they just don't care, but I care, and creators care. So here's why I think AI is bad for creativity. We know it doesn't credit the original artist. We know it doesn't even ask their permission. We know it doesn't share any revenue with the original creator. We know that AI art can't even be copyrighted, so it can in turn be just stolen from some other for some other effort and another purpose. So. But those aren't even the most important reasons. I think there are two reasons I think that are even more important. First is the why. When I'm designing something, it's really all about the end product. So a creation success is about what's behind the pretty object, the why. why does it look the way it does? Why does it exist at all? What is the story behind this creation? That story is just as important as the end product. It's its meaning for being. AI outputs have no why. They can't. Remember, AI is trying to replicate the output of human creativity by leapfrogging the creative process. So without that process, there's no why, no story. It's just dead text or dead pixels. And when I look at things like that, or other creators look at AI outputs, we just see like a thin, glossy veneer over just empty hollowness with no reason for being. It's not something to show off or be proud of. It's just like visual junk. It's like a parrot repeating familiar words back to you that it doesn't even know what the meaning of those words are. So my second reason is a great quote by Thoreau, who said, we never gain something but that we lose something. So we've gained these AI tools, but what have we lost? Well, I know what we've lost. Creativity is a function of the human mind that must be exercised. I spend hours a day, flexing that creative muscle as part of my jobs, but without that constant usage, it would wither like a vestigial organ. And creativity is way too precious a quality to outsource to machines. We don't need to outsource that. We need that creative spirit to survive, whether it's in the artistic space or facing humanity's greatest challenges. So when I see people begin to rely on AI and to ignite that creative spark for them, I don't see what they've gained. I only see what they've lost. And the sad thing is, I don't think they even realize they're losing it. Now, don't get me wrong, AI is probably good in several aspects to help support the creative process, like spell checking and grammar checking in text-based applications is really helpful. Or in Photoshop, like tedious management of the same task through layers multiple times is a really tedious and mundane thing that AI can help speed up and automate for you. Or like up-resing an image that's pixelated. Those are all perfect tasks for computers to jump in and help augment the creative process, but they're not coming up with the creative spark themselves. So I acknowledge that it also probably isn't going away. I think as its use becomes more prevalent, it's going to force creators to push the boundaries, to explore areas that are not in its AI training data set. And that's certainly happened in the past in innovation in art or music. But I'll never use generative AI tools in my projects. My team won't use them on our projects, whether it's a cutting-edge product design or a tabletop game, because I support human creativity. And if you've made it this far, well, first, thanks for listening. But more importantly, I hope you will also support projects exclusively created by living, breathing, struggling, and inspiring humans.